This conference will now be recorded.
In yesterday's session, we were discussing about the Terraform configuration languages, CL, different types of blocks. We have various types of blocks like Terraform block, provider block, resource block, variable block, local block, output block, module block, module block, like this, and a data block. So then we started discussing about how to set up Terraform and the required supported IDEs to make the Terraform development easy. We have installed Visual Studio Code, an editor of our choice. It is not mandatory, but Visual Studio Code will help us to write the Terraform configurations, Terraform files easily. We have installed Visual Studio Code, we have installed Terraform, and we installed AWS CLI also, but it is not mandatory, AWS CLI. Suppose you are using AWS provider to manage AWS resources via Terraform. Whatever credentials we configured using AWS CLI, those credentials can be used by your Terraform to communicate with AWS APIs internally. Okay, that's why we have installed AWS CLI also. I hope everyone is able to set up the Terraform in their local systems. Is everyone ready with the Terraform installation and the IDE, the Visual Studio Code? Are you guys still able to, are you guys still not yet installed or not yet configured Terraform as of now? Anyone yet to do the setup? It's all done? Good. So before we create any resource, before we create and manage any resource using Terraform, let's understand the Terraform workflow. Let's understand the Terraform workflow. Let's understand the Terraform workflow. So before you create any resource, any type of resource on any provider, you have to understand the workflow of Terraform, how Terraform workflow will start, where, at what point you need to start the Terraform. So the first and foremost thing, right, scope. You need to identify the scope. Scope in the sense your resources, what resources you want to create using Terraform. First and foremost thing, identify the scope of your resources. Kind of a requirement, right? You need to work on your requirements. What is the scope? What resources I need to manage, or what resources I need to manage using Terraform. First, you need to identify the scope of your resources. Most important thing is to understand your infrastructure needs. First, you need to understand your needs, your requirements. The most important thing is to understand your infrastructure needs. What resources needs to be managed using Terraform, and your use cases. Without scope, without requirement of your infrastructure needs, you can't write randomly, right? Your Terraform script. Suppose you don't know what resources needs to be created using Terraform, will you be able to define the Terraform configurations? Are you going to write the resources randomly? No. First, you need to identify what is the scope. You need to understand your infrastructure need, what resources needs to be created, like networks, VPC, or servers, or Kubernetes clusters, or database instances like RDS, or any resource. What resources needs to be created, or what resources needs to be managed Using Terraform, you need to identify, you need to scope. Most important thing is to understand your infrastructure need, what resources needs to be managed using Terraform and your use cases. That is the first thing you need to do. Once you have a scope, once you identify, I want to create so and so resource in so and so provider like that, then you will start writing your code. Then you will write, then you start writing your Terraform configurations for whatever resources you want to manage. So once you identify the scope of your requirement, what resources needs to be created and managed using Terraform, then you will start writing the Terraform configuration just like you write the code. Just like you write the code in your editor of choice. In your editor of choice, that can be, you can use normal Notepad++, or it can be Notepad, or it can be VI editor, or some editor like Visual Studio Code. Whatever, according to your convenience, will write Terraform configurations just like you write the code in your editor of choice. And also, it's a common practice. It's a common practice to store your work, your configurations, your Terraform configurations in a version controlled systems, in a version controlled repository. Even you are only working as an individual, even though you are the only one individual you are working on Terraform, but still it's a common practice to maintain in a version control. So if you are maintaining in a version control, will you be able to track your configurations, your changes, what changes has been done to the Terraform script itself, your desired state itself. The Terraform configuration is your desired state of your resources. Can we track what changes, what modifications we have done to our infrastructure resources in that code? Yes. So even though you are the only person working on the Terraform infrastructure as a code, it's a common practice to maintain, store that infrastructure configuration files, Terraform scripts in the version control system. First, you need to identify the scope. Then you write your Terraform configuration just like you write code in your editor of your choice. And it's a common practice store your work, your code in a version control repository, even when you are just operating as an individual also. Once you write your infrastructure code, once you write your infrastructure as a code using Terraform, then you can follow the below workflow. Then you can follow this workflow. Once you write infrastructure code using Terraform, then you can follow below workflow as per your needs. First, you need to identify the scope of your resources, what resources needs to be created. Then based on your requirement, based on your scope of the work, you write Terraform code, Terraform configurations for that resources to be created and managed via Terraform. Once you write the Terraform script, then you can follow below workflow as per your needs. First and very important thing, Terraform init initialization. Once you write the code, in that code from the directory, you are going to initialize the Terraform. Suppose you have written a Terraform script as per your requirement. From the directory, like in that present directory where you have Terraform configurations, you can consider that as a root module, right? Yesterday we discussed. Even a folder with a single Terraform file also, if you are running Terraform commands from that directory, that becomes the contents of that folder becomes a root module. We discussed yesterday, right? So once you write a Terraform script, once you write a Terraform configurations, then we can follow this workflow as per your needs. The first and foremost thing, Terraform initialization, Terraform init command. Init. This init is used. This init is used to initialize a working directory. To initialize a working directory containing Terraform configuration files. So this Terraform init command, init command initialize a working directory containing Terraform configuration files. So this is the first command. This is the first command. Terraform init is the first command we should be running, we should be executed after we write a new Terraform configuration. Once you write a new Terraform configuration files, this is the first command we should run. So what this Terraform init does, it will initialize the directory, Terraform working directory. It is going to initialize a working directory containing Terraform configuration files. By default, Terraform init assumes that the working directory already contains a configuration, will attempt to initialize that configuration. The first command that should be running after creating a new Terraform configuration or after cloning the existing one from a version control system. Suppose you already have a Terraform configuration in the version control system, or you are creating a Terraform configuration, or you are cloning from the version control system. This is the first command we should run after writing a new Terraform configuration or cloning an existing one from version control system. And you can run this one multiple times. It is safe to run this Terraform init multiple times. So what this Terraform init does, it is going to initialize a working directory containing Terraform configuration files. It is going to download the providers first. The Terraform init command will initialize the working directory by downloading the providers. You have defined what providers you are going to use to create the resources in Terraform configuration, right? That providers will be downloaded by this Terraform init command. So is everyone clear? Once you write the Terraform configurations as per your scope, as per your requirement, you need to run Terraform init to initialize the Terraform working directory. This will download the providers, required providers as per your Terraform configurations. This is the first command we should be running after writing a Terraform configuration, or even though you are cloning the existing one from version control system. Clear? What do you mean by this Terraform init? The first workflow command which we needs to be executed. What this does? Is everyone clear? Now the second. This is optional. Second command is optional, but it is good to run. Validate. Second command is optional, but it is good to run. That is validate. So what this Terraform validate does? What this Terraform validate does? The name itself is saying validate. It will validate the Terraform configuration files. It is going to validate the Terraform configuration files in that respective directory. In whatever Terraform configuration files, .tf files you have in that working directory, it is going to validate those Terraform configuration files which is part of that working directory to ensure that they are syntactically valid and internally consistent. The name itself is saying validate. So this Terraform validate command, this is optional command but good to run. So Terraform validate command does exactly what it is suggesting. Terraform validate command does exactly what it name suggesting. It is going to check the Terraform configurations, Terraform code for syntax errors and ensure that it is internally consistent also. It is going to look only, the Terraform validate is going to look at the Terraform configuration files in the current working directory, that like a root directory. Current working directory like a root directory. If you want to validate the Terraform configuration files in a nested folders, kind of a child modules, in a sub modules or child directories, you need to use one more tag with validate command ---- recursive flag. Otherwise, by default, Terraform validate is going to validate the Terraform configuration files which is there in that current working directory. But if you have some folders, subfolders or modules we call it, under modules, whatever Terraform configuration files you have, Terraform validate will not validate those one unless until you use this flag. Clear what Terraform validate does? It's an optional command, but it is good to run so that you can check is your Terraform configuration files are syntactically valid and consistent like that. Clear what Terraform validate does? It's an optional, but it is good to run. Terraform init is important. Terraform init is very, very important. You need to run this Terraform init command. So this command will do several initialization steps. This Terraform command will do several initialization steps in order to prepare the current working directory for use with Terraform. As I already told, it is going to download required providers. Whatever providers you have used in Terraform configurations, it is going to download the providers. Suppose you are using some kind of a remote backends. We will discuss what is backend, a remote backend. Suppose you are using some kind of a remote backend to maintain the state file, it is going to do that backend installation or initialization. And suppose you are using modules, it is going to download those modules also from the Terraform registry. Okay, so Terraform init is the very, very important command. It will initialize a working directory containing Terraform configuration files. By default, Terraform init assumes that working directory already contains a configuration files, Terraform files, and it will try to initialize those configurations. This is the first command you should run after writing a new Terraform configurations or cloning an existing one from version control. And you can run this multiple times also, this Terraform init. It is going to do a lot of things, initialization process, like backend installation, plugin installation, like providers downloading, child modules download, if you are using modules like this. Then Terraform validate is an optional command in the workflow. It's an optional command in the workflow, but it is good to run validate so that it is going to ensure that the Terraform configurations don't have any syntax errors and it is consistent also. Clear? What do you mean by Terraform init? What do you mean by Terraform validate when it comes to workflow after you write the Terraform code? Why you need to do this? Why you need to do this? Before I proceed, next command, the Terraform basic workflow. The next and very important is Terraform plan. Terraform plan. So this Terraform plan command will create an execution plan. It will create an execution plan. Terraform performs. It is going to create an execution plan. Terraform is going to create this Terraform plan command will create an it will create an execution plan. The Terraform plan commands create an execution plan. How it will create execution plan, like what resources needs to be added, what resources needs to be updated, or what resources needs to be destroyed. This Terraform plan will create an execution plan. It will let you know what resources needs to be added, what resources needs to be updated, what resources needs to be deleted. Like that, it is going to create some plan, execution plan. But how this plan will be prepared by the Terraform plan command, right? So this Terraform plan command, it is going to read the current state. It is going to read the current state of any already existing resources, remote objects, to make sure that the Terraform state is up to date. It is going to compare the current configuration, that desired state, that current configuration code, desired state, to the prior state, that state file. And it is going to note, is there any difference between the current configurations and the previous state, earlier state? And if there are differences in the current configurations, your Terraform configurations, and to the prior state, earlier state of your resources, it is going to propose, this Terraform plan command is going to propose set of change actions that should applied. Change actions that should, if applied, make the remote objects match the configuration. So it is going to create an execution plan. It is going to create an execution plan which will let you preview the changes, what resources needs to be created, updated, deleted, that Terraform plan to make to your infrastructure. By default, when Terraform creates a plan, by default, when Terraform creates a plan, it will do lot of things. It is going to do following things. It will read the current state of already created resources from the state file, and it is going to compare the current configuration files, that is your desired state, to the previous state, and it is going to note is there any differences, and it is going to propose what changes, what actions needs to be performed if we are applying to make the objects match with current configuration. So it is going to create some kind of a plan, execution plan, what resources needs to be created or updated, deleted by comparing the current state file and the desired state is, that is your configuration. It is not going to apply, it is not going to apply, it is going to create a plan. But if I apply that, is Terraform is going to make the changes according to the plan, adding some resources or updating or deleting resources like that? Yes. So is everyone clear? What is this Terraform plan? It is going to create an execution plan by reading the current configurations and the state. It is going to create a plan. What resources needs to be added, what resources needs to be destroyed, what resources needs to be updated like that. And Terraform performs a refresh and determines what actions are necessary to perform to achieve the desired state specified in the configuration files. Is everyone clear? Terraform plan command, this workflow, Terraform workflow in the what we are going to do using plan. You are planning by reading that Terraform is going to plan what resources needs to be created or updated or deleted by comparing the current state with the desired state, that is your configuration files. Okay. So if I told yesterday session, not sure how many guys went through. I think Balaji just joined today. Balaji, did you guys went through the Terraform basics? This is the 4th class of Terraform. Did you went through the yesterday sessions, previous sessions? There is something called state management.
Sir, I just went through first one, so I need to do for other 3 videos, sir.
Kindly go through, because in detail we have discussed what is state management, what is current state, desired state, like that. Just to give an example, let me tell you, this is your Terraform configuration code. Let's say this is your Terraform configuration code. Let me open that code, whatever I have shown. Let's say this is your Terraform configuration code. Okay, this is Terraform configuration file. We discussed what is a TF file, what is resource block, data block, all those things in detail we discussed. Kindly go through. And this is my Terraform configuration. I can consider this as a desired state. I can consider this as a desired state. I can consider this as a desired state. Now this is my provisioning server. This is my provisioning server where I have a Terraform installed. Terraform installed, and I have my Terraform configurations in some folder like this. Some folder like this. And this is my Terraform configuration. This is my Terraform configuration. Let me keep a note of this one. This is my Terraform configuration. So I am expecting, I want to create a AWS resource, AWS instance. Now this is desired state. This is your real world infrastructure. This is your real world infrastructure, AWS. This is your real world infrastructure. This is your AWS cloud. Now, this is my desired state. When I execute Terraform plan, it is going to compare, this desired state with current state. There is a state file. As I already told, Terraform only will create and manage the state file. By default, it is local state. Since there is no resources in the real infrastructure, There is no state file also, because you are running for the first time. There is no state file also. Now this is desired state. Currently nothing is there in your real infrastructure, nothing is there, and there is no state also here. Now does Terraform will identify that what resources needs to be added by comparing with the current and real resources? Now does Terraform will come to know that okay, this needs to be added, this needs to be added, this resource needs to be added, and as per this resource configuration, this Terraform is going to create a resource. I mean, it's a plan will just display. Plan will just display. It is not going to apply. This Terraform plan will display your execution plan. It is going to say one resource needs to be added, zero needs to be, zero resources needs to be updated, zero to be destroyed, like that. It is going to prepare one execution plan by comparing this Terraform configuration. This is your desired state with the real infrastructure, that is current state, that current state. So Terraform will come to know that okay, as per this desired state, as per this configuration, and since there is no resources actually in the real environment, I need to create, we may need to create one resource, like that it will display. Then when you actually apply, when you actually apply Terraform plan, with the help of that provider, it will create this resource as per this resource configurations. It is going to create a EC2 instance. It is going to create a EC2 instance of type t2.micro using that AMI. Then there will be a state file created. There will be a state file created. In the state file, in the Terraform state file, it is going to have the state. Since it is created that resource, the resource state will be maintained in the state file. Now without making any changes to your Terraform configuration, even though I execute one more time Terraform apply, even though there is no change in the resources configurations, if I try to run Terraform apply, again it is going to compare, right? Apply also will internally do the planning again. Terraform apply, again it will compare the current state with this desired state, and the current state and the desired state is matching. There is no changes in my desired state also. Again, is it going to make any changes here in the actual resources, in the actual infrastructure? Is it going to make any changes if there is no change in the desired state and your current state? No. But let's say I am going to change, let's say t2.micro, let's say I am saying t2.medium, I am saying t2.medium I need. So this is desired state. Current state, there is a instance, but instance type is t2.micro currently, but my desired state t2.medium. This Terraform apply command, if you again execute apply, it will show the differences. So there is a resource, but the current state is t2.micro, but you are saying t2.medium. There is a difference. So will I get a message saying that one resource needs to be updated, like that? When I execute Terraform plan with modifying this code, I will say one resource needs to be updated, like that. Then if I apply, this will be replaced with t2.medium. So Terraform plan will compare your desired state, that is your Terraform configurations, with real resources, with real infrastructure, with the help of that state file. State file is again generated by Terraform only, and in the state file it is going to maintain the current state or previous state. You can consider current state or previous state of your resource. Is those details will be maintained in the state file by Terraform. When executing Terraform plan, it is going to compare this desired state with current state. It will prepare an execution plan, like saying that what resources needs to be created, what resources needs to be updated or destroyed, like that. Once you apply, then the Terraform will execute that execution plan, whatever has been prepared by plan. But even though you don't do plan, even though you are not doing planning, if you directly execute Terraform apply also, you are directly executing Terraform apply also, it will prepare that planning. But it is recommended to run the plan so that you will see the preview. You will see the preview of changes like a trailer. The Terraform plan is like a trailer for your actual movie, but it is not going to actually make any changes. Terraform plan will not make any changes to your resources. It is just going to preview. It is going to just preview what resources needs to be added, what resources needs to be modified, what resources needs to be destroyed. But it is not going to make any changes to your actual resources. It is like a preview. You can see the preview, what changes are there in the current state comparing with the desired state. But if you apply, then it is going to make those changes. Terraform apply will make the changes. Terraform plan, you can skip and you can execute Terraform apply directly. Terraform apply also does that planning, but it is like a without preview, like without a trailer, you are watching a movie like that. So if you plan, you can come to know what resources are going to be added, updated, deleted like that. But it is not going to update or delete or create that planning. Clear? Now, guys, this is already discussed. As I already told, right? This you need to understand. Terraform black, provider black, data black, resource black. We discussed a lot of things, guys. Terraform architecture. There are two main components in the Terraform, like Terraform core, Terraform providers. Terraform core will take two things as input, that is state file and configurations. Kindly go through those sessions, guys. This is very, very important before I start the sessions. Terraform will start the instance. That is cloud specific, Aravind, because if your API, Terraform is internally using APIs only. Terraform is internally using providers, that providers are making API calls. If you know AWS concept, does Terraform, I mean to say, if you want to change the instance type, do you need to start the instance and change the instance type and start only? That is nothing to do with Terraform. That is internally Terraform is using AWS APIs. Is there a way we can change the instance type without stopping the EC2 instance in AWS? No. There is no way you can change the instance type without stopping the instance. That is how AWS is working. So Terraform is internally making a AWS APIs only. So Terraform is just contacting AWS. Can you please change this instance type from t2.micro to t2.medium, because earlier I have created a t2.micro, but now the desired state is t2.medium. Arvind is asking me to change to t2.medium. Can you please change this to t2.medium? This is how communication will happen with that provider. So AWS can't do that without stopping, right? What AWS does, okay, I'll change the instance type. So it will stop the instance and it will change the instance type. That is how it works. Terraform is just a mediator. Terraform is just a mediator between the human and the cloud, that provider basically. Terraform is a mediator between your configurations and that cloud. So Terraform is internally using providers. Providers are basically APIs only. Clear? Just to make things simple for you. There is no rocket science here. Terraform has a concept of provider, and you are giving your infrastructure resources in the form of code. You are defining your infrastructure resources, what resources needs to be created or updated or deleted in the form of code to the Terraform core. Terraform core is comparing the desired state, that is your infrastructure resources, with the current state, and it is going to create an execution plan. What resources needs to be added, updated, deleted. When you say Terraform apply, It is just passing that information to your cloud, that provider, using your provider APIs. There is no rocket science here. But Terraform is making things simple for us to create infrastructure programmatically as a code, declarative way. Clear? I hope you can understand now Terraform, actual power of Terraform. Now, is everyone clear? Terraform plan, what Terraform plan does? It is not going to make any changes to the resources, but it will just compare the current state or previous state, you call it, with your desired state, that is your Terraform configurations, and it will prepare one plan. So, okay, these many resources needs to be updated, these many resources needs to be destroyed or added like that. But it is not going to make any changes to your real resources. It is just a planning, kind of a preview. Clear, everyone, what is this Terraform plan? It is always recommended to run the Terraform plan so that you can see your changes, your preview. You can directly run apply, but if you are saying apply, it will prepare a plan and apply directly. It is not safe, right? Because you need to review. You need to review what changes is going to be done. Clear what Terraform plan does? The next one, Terraform apply. Terraform apply. The name itself it is saying, just to make things simple, in your Kubernetes you are saying kubectl apply. You are saying kubectl apply, right? Similarly, Terraform apply. So this Terraform plan is like a dry run in your, it is like a dry run in your Kubernetes, right? You can do the dry run on your Kubernetes resources, right? Whatever resources you want to create in Kubernetes. Same concept here. Terraform apply is going to apply the changes. Terraform apply command will execute the actions. It is going to execute the actions proposed in a Terraform plan. Terraform apply command will execute. It is going to execute that plan. It is going to execute that actions proposed in a Terraform plan. When you run Terraform apply without plan also, I told right, without a Terraform plan also, you are, let's say you are running Terraform apply. Terraform will create a plan. Terraform will create a plan internally. If you are running Terraform apply without planning also, Terraform automatically creates a new execution plan as if you already run the Terraform plan like that. And it is going to prompt you to approve. Again, it is going to display kind of approval, whether you want to approve or not like that. If you say yes, then Terraform will make the changes in the actual resources as per that plan. The plan is created by comparing current state with your configurations, that is desired state. So Terraform apply is going to execute that plan, proposed plan, to update or delete or add any resources as per the current and desired state. This is the very, very important command, but it will ask you some kind of approval, whether you want to proceed or not, like that. Clear? What is this Terraform apply does? So Terraform apply is used to apply the changes. This Terraform apply is used to apply the changes required to reach the desired state of your configuration. You are going to use Terraform apply. You are going to use Terraform apply to apply the changes required to reach your desired state of the configuration. By default, apply will scan the current directory, that working directory, for the configurations, the Terraform files, and it is going to apply the changes appropriately by comparing the state. Clear? Terraform apply, what Terraform apply does? Now, the destroy. The name itself is saying destroy, Terraform destroy. Suppose whatever resources are created using Terraform, suppose I want to destroy all those resources. Destroy, you can understand, right? Destroy is like deleting. So destroy in the sense deleting. That can be any resource created via Terraform. So destroy is used to destroy the Terraform managed resources. Destroy is used to Terraform managed infrastructure. This will ask for a confirmation before destroying again. This Terraform destroy also will ask the confirmation. So Terraform, this will destroy the resources created by the Terraform configuration files. Whatever resources has been created using your Terraform configuration files, and if you run the Terraform destroy from the directory where you have a Terraform configuration file, whatever resources has been created or updated by that Terraform using the Terraform configuration file, those Terraform resources will be destroyed. This will destroy the resources created by the Terraform configuration files. But this is a typical workflow. But are you going to run destroy immediately after applying like that? No, right? It is not like a step 1 run this, step 2 run this, step 3 run this, step 4 run this, like that. Suppose you really want to destroy your resources, you don't want that resources anymore, can I simply run Terraform destroy command so that it will terminate all the resources whatever has been created using the Terraform configuration files? Yes. Clear? A typical Terraform workflow. First and foremost thing, you need to identify the scope. What resources needs to be managed using Terraform. Then you are going to write your Terraform configurations, the Terraform scripts in your editor of choice. It's a common practice to store your work in the version controlled repository also. Based on what resources needs to be created, you are going to use appropriate providers in the Terraform configurations, appropriate resource types you are going to create from that provider, like that. Then once you write, you are going to do initialization. This is important, where it is going to download required providers, that plugins basically, and it is going to download any backend installations, like if you are using remote state backends, and it is going to download if you are using any modules from Terraform registry again, and validate is going to validate your Terraform configuration files for doing a kind of a syntactical or internal consistency, but this is optional. Good to run. Terraform plan is like a preview. Without running plan, you can directly apply, but it is good to run plan so that you can preview. You can see the preview of output, what resources needs to be added, updated, like that. Is everyone clear? A typical Terraform workflow. Now, before I start with AWS provider, to understand this workflow, let me start very simple concept. Just I want to create a file. Let's say very simple, the scope of my task now. Let's understand the scope. I want to create a file. I want to create a file resource. Before I jump into very advanced concepts like AWS resources, let's understand the Terraform workflow. We using very simple concept only. My scope of work is I want to create a file resource using Terraform. I want to create, let's say, create or update or basically delete. In simple, I want to manage basically file. I want to manage a file. This is my scope of work. Before we jump into very advanced concepts like AWS provider, let's understand the workflow by taking very simple provider. I want to create or update or manage a file resource. Now this is my scope of work. Once I identify the scope, do I need to write Terraform configuration for this scope? I identified that I want to manage this resource. I want to manage this resource using Terraform. File is also a resource, guys. When it comes to Terraform, everything is a resource. Not only just your EC2 instance, not only your VPC, not only your ELB. File is also one resource when it comes to Terraform. So this is the scope of work. Once you identify the scope, what is the next thing you are going to do? You are going to write your Terraform configurations. So Terraform configurations using what? Using HCL. Using HCL, HashiCorp language, domain specific language, which we will be used to define our infrastructure resources in a Terraform. Terraform configurations, Terraform scripts, we are going to write in the form of HCL. So there are basics we discussed, blocks like that. Using HCL, we'll write the code. I hope everyone already has a Visual Studio Code. I hope everyone already has a Visual Studio Code, right? So let me do something. Just for practicing purpose, let me create a new folder. Let me create a new folder in my local laptop, and I'll create a folder. This is like a main folder. Let's say I'll rename this folder. I'll rename this folder Terraform lab. Terraform lab. Let me create a one more folder inside this one, just to understand, like one more folder. Let's say Terraform. Terraform local provider. So there is something called local, okay? Terraform local provider. Let's say let me give Terraform local. So this is the folder. This is that folder under Terraform lab. Maybe let me give Terraform demo. Let me give Terraform demo or Terraform local, whatever it is. Let it be. So I am going to open this folder from a Visual Studio Code for writing the code. But it is not mandatory. Can you write using VI or TextPad, Notepad also? That file in that Terraform files? Yes. But it is good to use this Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to open that folder. I'm going to open that folder. Terraform, I open Visual Studio Code. I will go to file, open folder. Let me open this folder, Terraform lab. Inside that, I think there is one more folder, this Terraform local. I am going to open this Terraform local folder like this. As of now, do I have any files? Do I have any files in this Terraform local folder? As of now, no. Now let me create a file. I'm going to use this. You need to explore Visual Studio, guys. Nothing to do with Terraform here. I'm clicking on this one, main.tf. Main.tf. You can give anything. You can give anything, right? Now, this is the scope of work. This is the scope of work. I need to create a file resource. To create a file resources in the Terraform registry, there is one provider called local. There is one provider called local. You can use this provider to manage local resources such as files. Just to understand Terraform workflow, let's start with very basic provider. There is one provider called local. This provider is used to manage local resources such as files. So for my scope of work, just to understand the Terraform workflow, we are taking very basic provider. Now, this is the provider, local provider. So if you see the documentation, what they're saying, this local provider can be used to manage local resources such as files. So can I create a files locally using this local provider via Terraform? Yes. So let me go to the documentation. I'm going to see this documentation. So local provider is used to manage local resources such as files. In the right hand side, you can see what resources can be created. What resources can be created using Terraform. What data sources are there in a Terraform also, this provider. So let me go to this local file. They are saying something like this. They are saying something like this: resource, local file, what content and what name of the, what is the file name? What is the file name, right? So if I have to use this local provider, if I have to use this local provider, first I need to define the Terraform block. First I need to define the Terraform block, right? We discussed all these things. Let's say my Terraform block, I'll say Terraform. This Terraform block, we discussed, right? The Terraform block, required providers, required providers, required providers. You can say what provider you need, what provider you need. So just to give an example, right? Yesterday for demonstrating, I have shown this provider block with the, I have shown provider block with the AWS provider, but I can use local provider. So in Terraform, I am saying, in Terraform block, I am saying I want to use local provider. So local provider is used to manage local files, local files. So you can use this local provider. You can use this local providers to manage your files locally. To manage your files locally, you can say Terraform. In Terraform block, you can say provider. You can say what provider you need. The way we have defined, required version is not mandatory. Required version is not mandatory, guys. Required version is not mandatory, but suppose you have a requirement with you want to go with the requirement also. You want to go with requirement also, like you have a requirement to use provide, required version you can define, but nothing is mandatory. Now I am saying required providers. I am saying local. I am saying local like this, and within this I am going to define. Within this I am going to define something like this. Let's say source. So this source, I am saying source. This is from here only. This is from here only, right? You can see this is from HashiCorp only. You can see this is from HashiCorp, right? This local provider is from HashiCorp only. This is official only, right? You can say something like this. You can say something like this: HashiCorp local, HashiCorp local, source, HashiCorp local / local. So this is official one only. And version also, if required, you can specify. Version also, if required, you can specify. This is the latest version, right? 2.3.0 like that. So you can specify version also if you need this version, or if you don't specify also, latest version will be downloaded. Now, once you define like this, then you can start creating a resource. You can start creating a resource using that local provider. Using this local provider, you can create a resource like this resource. We discussed already, right? So I'm saying resource, provider, and the resource type which is supporting. Provider and the resource type which is supporting. So this is the file name. This is the file name. Let's say I will give something like this: hello.txt. Guys, we discussed all these things yesterday. It is, what is this, guys? A name. A name. It is not a, it is like a resource name which you can use. Guys, we discussed all these things. That's why I told go through this. What is block, right? When it comes to resource block, resource block type resource, what type of resource you want to create, that provider underscore resource type, what is this? Now I am trying to use resource block, and what provider I am using, local provider, and what type of resource I want to create and manage using that provider, file. And what is this? It's kind of a name, labels. It's kind of a name, labels, but this is not the file name. Okay, this is not the file name. You can just give something also, demo also. So now what are these things? Here? Attributes, not variables. Attributes or arguments, we call it, basically arguments for that resources, argument for that resource type. These are not variables. This is an argument. For this resource type. This is an argument for resource type. So if you see, can you see that argument reference also? What is required? File name. File name is mandatory. Required attributes are required arguments, basically required arguments. File name is mandatory, right? And optional, you have content, something like this. This is file provider. These are arguments for this resource type. These are not variables. Understand, there is a difference between variables and arguments. Okay, these are arguments, or I can say configurations of this resource type. Clear? File name is mandatory. They're saying file name is mandatory, like that. Now this is my Terraform configuration. Now I need to run these Terraform commands from the directory, where I have a Terraform configuration files. Suppose if you guys are using Windows, can you go to command prompt and can you go to this folder to run the commands? Suppose if you guys are using Windows laptop, you can go to command prompt, right? CMD. You can go to that folder. Can you guys copy this path like this? And can you guys open that in a terminal or command prompt, whatever you need, because you need to run the commands, Terraform commands from this directory. Suppose if you guys are using Visual Studio Code, also, you can directly use a terminal option here. You can directly use something called terminal option here. So if you see here, you can see there are some options. Terminal option is there. If you right click somewhere here, you can see there is something called open integrated terminal. Or here also you can see that option. If you go to this only few options are showing here, but anyhow, if you see, right click here, if you say open integrated terminal, if you click like this, kind of a terminal, your CMD, suppose you are using a Windows laptop, that integrated terminal will be shown here. Otherwise you can go to the command prompt for running. For some reason this is not coming. Let me reload this. Let me quit the Visual Studio Code. And let me open one more time. Let me open that folder, whatever folder, under desktop, under Terraform lab, Terraform local. Let me open this folder where I have that Terraform configuration. I should see this option. There was some problem with Visual Studio Code. I stopped and opened. So you can see there is an option here in your Visual Studio Code. The way you have a file edit like this, there is a terminal. if you click on this new terminal, it is going to open integrated terminal here itself, like your command prompt in this folder. So this is my current folder where I have this Terraform configuration file. Now I have identified the scope. I have identified the scope, what resources needs to be created using Terraform. Then I have written a code. This is my Terraform configuration. I'm using local provider, and using that local provider, I'm just creating a file. This is the file name. I'm just giving mandatory field, that is file name. Now the workflow starts here. The workflow starts here. Does Terraform need this plugin? Does Terraform need this plugin or provider to create this type of resource? Yes. So what needs to be done first? What needs to be done first as per the workflow? Do I need to initialize the Terraform so that it is going to download required providers? Yes. So let me run. Guys, make sure you are running the command, the Terraform command from the folder where you have your Terraform configurations. We already discussed all these things, Terraform file, Terraform directory in the yesterday session. So make sure you are running your Terraform commands from the directory where you have a Terraform configuration files. So to have a Terraform configuration file, that is main.tf file in this folder. Yes. Now let me run Terraform init and let's see what will happen. Let me run Terraform init and let's see what will happen. Now if you see the Terraform init command, the moment I executed Terraform init command, so it is initializing the backend, but there is no backend. So that's why nothing happened. Is it downloading the plugins? Is it initializing the provider plugins? Which means, is it downloading that provider, whatever provider I have mentioned, local provider? Did you guys observe here what happened? Initializing HashiCorp local, installed HashiCorp local version 2.3.0. Since I have not mentioned the version, is it downloaded the latest version only of that provider from HashiCorp? This is the latest version only. Yes. And if you see, the moment I executed this command, did you guys observe here in that Terraform working directory, that root directory, do you see one folder called .terraform got created? Earlier this was not there. Did you guys observe this? One .terraform folder got created now. If you expand, if I expand, there is one more, like here. Let me show you. Let me execute ls also here, since it's a Linux, right? Mac. Do you see ls-lar? Do you see one folder called .terraform created when I executed Terraform init? And within that .terraform, in that again I have some folder called providers. Within that providers, again I have one folder. Called registry name, and within that registry folder I have one more folder called HashiCorp. Within that HashiCorp folder I have a local. So that provider got downloaded, that provider or plugin got downloaded. So with the help of this provider, it is going to create or manage this type of resource. This is local file. So it has just initialized the plugin. And it has created a one more file also. That is this file, terraform.log.hcl file. So this file is maintained automatically by Terraform init only for future purpose. So it is just tracking what version of the provider has been used. Since we have not mentioned the version of the provider, here, it has created one file called terraform.log.hcl. There it is tracking what version of the provider is used, and it is recommended to check in this terraform.log.hcl file, also recommended to check in your SCM tools. Suppose in the future, wherever I am executing Terraform init, wherever I am going to execute Terraform init, if we have this terraform.log.hcl file, even though there is a new version of the provider, it is going to always download this provider only. In any other systems also, wherever you are executing Terraform init, if you have this terraform.log.hcl file in your version control system or somewhere you maintain, in other system, again, if you guys are running Terraform init also, again it is going to download this version only. So is everyone clear what happened when we run Terraform init? When we executed Terraform init, it has downloaded that provider, that plugin, and it is created one file called terraform.log.hcl file. So this terraform.log.hcl file has the version, the provider and version. What version is downloaded when we execute a Terraform init? In future, even though there is a latest version of the provider, if you have this terraform.log.hcl file in your Terraform directory, again if I execute Terraform init also, it is going to download the same version as per this log file. Clear? What is this terraform.log.hcl file? And what is this .terraform folder? What is this .terraform folder? It has just initialized the provider. Now what is the next? One second. What is the next? As of now, do I have any state file? As of now, do I have any state file? Which means, is this resource is created as of now, and is it maintaining this resource state as of now? No. Now, next, this is optional. Terraform validate. It is just for validating your resources, that configurations. So this is optional. Validate. Terraform validate. It is optional. But if you see, they are giving some kind of a error. Here. They are saying invalid attribute combination with the local file demo, line number 9, right? No attribute specified when only this is required again. So there is kind of a mandatory. So this is required again, like that they are saying. At least you need to specify some attribute. I have just given file name. I have not given some other attributes. So that's why it is saying this is invalid. Now let me give that attribute content. Once I added this provider, now is it showing auto suggestions? That plugin, whatever we have installed, is it showing auto suggestions what attributes can be used for this resource type, like that? But when we don't define this, was it giving this one also when I am typing anything? When we don't initialized or don't done this one, was it showing something here? No, right? So after this is defined only, it was showing. Let me give something like this content. I am saying hello Terraform. Hello Terraform. Now let me do the Terraform validate. Now to see whether that is correct or not. Now is the Terraform configuration is valid? Is it saying it is valid, like that? Validation. Now let me plan. Terraform plan. Let me execute Terraform plan. So this is my desired state. I want to create a resource, file resource using this provider. I want to create a file. This is the name of the file. This is the content. I should have a file with this name, content with this one. I am using Terraform to create a resource file. Now let me plan. Since there is no file as of now and there is no state also, if I'm saying Terraform plan, it is comparing the current state with the desired state. So Terraform plan is giving execution plan. So Terraform will perform the following actions, saying that this will be created, this will be created, this will be created. It is saying 1 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy. It is giving plan. So currently, do I have any file with this name as of now? Locally, local provider only. Do I have any file with this name hello.txt like this here? No. And there is no state file. So this current state is this, desired state is this, current state is nothing. Now it is saying one resource to add, content is this one, file name is this one, right? These are like a default permission like that. Now when I say Terraform apply, actions will be performed now. Terraform apply, I am executing. Now when I am executing Terraform apply, it is asking the permissions. Do you want to perform these actions? Terraform will perform the actions described above. Terraform will perform these actions. Do you want to proceed? Yes, I want to proceed. Now if you see, I got a message saying that creation complete, one resource added like that. Now if I see here, do I have one file now? One file hello.txt got created here. Since I have not given complete path here, the file name, only name I have given, I have not given any path. So in the current directory only, do you see one file got created, hello.txt file? Is that file has this content as per that configuration, as per this resource configuration? Is it created a file with this name, with this content now, if you see? Yes. And did you guys observe it has created a state also? It has created a state file after creating the resource also. If you see this terraform.tf state file, it is maintaining that resource information. It is maintaining that resource information in the form of JSON. In the form of JSON, it is maintaining that resource information. It is maintaining that resource information. So what type of resource? What type of resource? Since I have mentioned resource type local-file, what type of resource? The name, since I have given a name here like this, it is tracked that one also. And it is saying the attributes. These are my attributes for that resource type. It is maintaining, okay, this is the content, this is the directory permissions, file permissions like that. So there is a state file created. Now there are no changes. I am not making any changes. Now if I say Terraform plan again, is it comparing this current state, I mean to say this desired state with current state using the state file of that resources? Is it going to compare the desired state? This is your configuration desired state with the current state of your resource using this state file. If I say Terraform plan again, is it saying 0 resources to add, 0 resources to update like that? No changes. Your infrastructure matches the configuration because there is no change in the desired state. Now let me update saying that hello Balaji. Now this is the desired state. But current state, this is the current state where this is the file name is this, content is this current state, but this is the desired state. Since I have modified the attribute value, let's say Terraform plan now, is it saying one resource needs to be added, one resource needs to be destroyed like that? Because it can't update. So what it is saying, I will destroy and I'll create like that. So this has to be replaced. That's what it is saying. It has to be replaced. It cannot be updated. Force replacement will happen. That is what it is saying. Here if you see Terraform plan, I have just executed Terraform plan. It is saying this resource has to be replaced. force replacement. Force replacement. That's why it is saying one destroy, one add. How Terraform plan is identifying? How Terraform plan is identifying what needs to be updated or what needs to be destroyed? Is it using this state, the current state, by comparing your desired state? This is your desired state. Your configuration is your desired state. And is it comparing your current state, the state file, .tf.state, the tf.state file? So it is comparing the configuration, this desired state and this current state. Now it is saying it has to be replaced like that, but it has not replaced. I have just planned. Now if I say Terraform apply, is these actions will be performed now? Terraform apply. If I say, let me close this. Let me close this. Let's say Terraform apply. I am saying Terraform apply. I will say yes, sir. Now if you see, one second, I should not. If you see, is this got updated now? It has destroyed, it has deleted, then again it is created. Now do you see, is this resource got matched as per the desired state now? Now let's say without changing anything, if you run multiple times also, it will say nothing, 0 added, 0 changed, 0 destroyed. Whether you are saying Terraform plan or Terraform apply, it is going to say your infrastructure matches the configuration. So this is matching current state with the desired state. Now, if there are any changes to the desired state, again it is going to compare this desired state, that is your Terraform configurations, with the current state. This is the current state. Since there is a change now, again if I say Terraform apply, directly you can apply. Apply also will create a plan internally. Now it is saying this is going to be performed. Let's say yes, sir. Now is it updated? Again something like this. To understand the Terraform, I started with very simple provider, that is local provider. But the Terraform concepts remain same whether you are using AWS provider or Azure provider. So you are going to define what resources needs to be managed using Terraform like this, and the Terraform will maintain the state file. I told avoid manipulating Terraform state file directly. If you guys remember in the red notes, in the highlighted font I have mentioned, avoid Terraform state file, modifying the state file directly. Why you need to delete the state file? What if state file is deleted? It will cause inconsistencies. Guys. Inconsistency in the sense, let me show that. You should not touch this state file anymore. I mean to say you should not manually edit this state file anymore. Suppose I am deleting this state file. This you never done. This you should never done. Now even though there is a file, even though there is a resource now, does Terraform will consider that there is no resource like that? If I say Terraform plan again, is it saying one resource needs to be added like that? Even though there is a resource here, is it saying one resource needs to be added like that because I have deleted that state file? Yes. Now is it going to duplicate? Is it going to duplicate when I say Terraform apply even though there is a file? Yes. Something like this will happen. So you should never touch Terraform state file. That's why in real time you are going to use remote backends to maintain centrally. Like S3 buckets, so that multiple teams also, multiple people also can collaborate. We will come to that point. And again you will enable the versioning. Suppose you guys are using S3 buckets. You are going to enable the versioning also. So it will maintain all the versions of your state files, current state file as well as previous state file also. Clear? You should never touch the state file. You should never manually modify the state file. That's what we discussed in the earlier sessions. Now I have a state file now. If I modify something, it is going to compare Terraform plan. It is saying this needs to be replaced. Okay, replace. I am saying okay, replace. Take the action. Proceed. Now is my file got updated as per my desired state? Is this resource got updated as per the desired state now? Yes. Suppose I am running multiple times, there is no change. It is saying it is up to date. It is up to date. Whether you plan, whether you apply, it is saying up to date. But if I have to destroy, Terraform, destroy. If I say Terraform destroy, so Terraform destroy. If I am saying Terraform destroy, it is again asking yes. Now is that file got deleted? Is that file got deleted? It is not there anymore here, right? That file destroyed. Now in the state file, also it is saying empty kind of a resource. Now again, if I say Terraform plan, it will say this has to be created. So let's say Terraform apply. It will create. If without changes, n number of times you apply, no change. It is saying 0 to add, 0 to change it. But let's say I'm going to modify my desired state, something like this. If I say Terraform plan or Terraform apply also directly, it will show this is the plan. If I say yes, it gets updated. So if I say Terraform destroy, it is going to be destroyed. To understand the Terraform workflow, I started with very simple provider, that is local provider, just to create or update or manage the file resource. So is everyone clear? The typical Terraform workflow, how Terraform is working now. So try to practice this local provider only first. In the Monday, I mean to say in the next session, I will continue with the AWS provider. We will start with AWS provider and we will try to create and manage AWS resources like EC2. Slowly we will get into the AWS resources using AWS provider. But whether it's a AWS provider, whether it's Azure provider, whether it's a GCP provider, based on the provider you are using, you can create and manage the resource types which is supported by that provider. Clear? Yes, before I start AWS provider in the next class, I want everyone to be up to date, especially last 5 sessions. In the last week, we discussed what is IAC, infrastructure as a code, and its advantages, declarative way, imperative way, and again, mutable infrastructure, immutable infrastructure we discussed in the last week. In this week, we discussed about Terraform introduction. What is the advantages with the Terraform? Then we discussed about HCL. What is what? Blocks, resource block, provider block. I want everyone to be clear on these concepts, whatever has been discussed in last 5 sessions before I start next class. So if you guys need holiday for next 3 days also, I'm fine. Tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, if you have to go through, because lot of theory has been discussed. If you need holiday for next 3 days also, I'm fine. I can continue on Monday. But if you are already up to date, I will take session tomorrow. And I don't want you to say, sir, still I need time when I start AWS provider. So is everyone fine taking a session tomorrow, or is everyone fine taking a session tomorrow or Monday? But I want you to finish whatever has been discussed. Okay. Subbarao is saying getting error. Guys, you see the syntax. Okay. Somewhere you might have done mistake. Somewhere you might have done mistake. Okay. Somewhere you have done the mistake. Guys, I can share these files, but understand there is no rocket science. There is no rocket science here. So source you have given completely wrong. This is not the way source you need to give. You no need to give that registry.terraform.io. Like that. Just hashicop space, because Terraform knows it is going to download from the Terraform registry only because you have given hashicop like this. So don't give that http registry.terraform.io like that. This is just a source. So this is the file content. I pinged you. Just play around with this one. I'll continue on Monday. Okay. But I want everyone to complete this 5 sessions of recordings detailed way, so that we will start with AWS provider, and we will understand the type of resources. Again, we will understand lot of concepts, variables, loops, conditions, all those things again. Thank you, guys. That's it for today. I'll continue tomorrow. And there are a lot of commands we will use in between. This is not the final command. These are workflow commands. These are workflow commands, but there are a lot of other commands you can use. We will understand all those commands. Today I have just explained workflow. Okay. Thank you, guys. Next session is on Monday. Then tomorrow no session, but everyone ready? Complete this practice using local provider, so that you can understand the Terraform concepts and basic workflow. Then we will start with AWS provider. Thank you. Next session is on Monday then.